Hi, lovelies. How are we today? I'm Summer. This is All Day Mystery. Why don't you take a seat, have some coffee, maybe some tea? I like to do true crime. I like to do a little bit of mystery. So if you are interested, please stay tuned. A new victim was just confirmed after 50 years from Ted Bundy. For more than 50 years, a teenage girl's murder in Utah remained officially unsolved. Detectives suspected one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. He even confessed to it before he died. But police could never prove it. Until now. Halloween night, 1974, 17-year-old Laura Aime leaves a party in Leah, Utah, and starts walking home. And if I say any of these names or words wrong, I do apologize. She never makes it home, that is. Weeks later, her body is discovered near the road leading into American Fork Canyon. She had been beaten, bound, and left in the cold. Investigators knew this was no random crime. This was personal, calculated, violent, and terrifyingly familiar. At the exact same time Laura disappeared, a man was actively hunting young women across Utah. A man who appeared charming, educated, harmless. He didn't fit the typical monster image. He looked normal, which made him more dangerous. That man was Ted Bundy. He studied physiology and even worked at a suicide hotline, ironically alongside future crime writer Anne Rule. The beginning started in 1961 with 8-year-old Anne Marie Burr. At the time, Bundy was 14 years old and living in the same area. He later hinted in interviews that his violence may have started very young. There's no proof with this case, though. By 1974, Bundy had already begun what would become one of the most notorious killing sprees in U.S. history, targeting young women in Washington, Oregon, Colorado, and Utah. And don't forget Florida as well. His method? He faked injuries, pretended to need help, used his charisma to get close. Then he abducted, essayed, and took lives. This man was such a monster. He went from, as a child, he abused animals. This is how he started out, abusing animals, taking their lives. I even read that he burned them, to children not being a limit. He is a monster. He would take the heads off of his victims and he would keep them and he would put makeup on them and he would brush their hair. He would wash them until he couldn't anymore when they started smelling, and then he would get rid of them and most likely throw them in the forest where he liked to hike. This guy was beyond a sicko, beyond strange, beyond a weirdo. He's just a monster. Laura Aime fit his exact victim profile. The location matched his known routes. The timing aligned perfectly. Investigators were almost certain. But they had one problem. They couldn't prove it. He wasn't just a killer. He was a master of escape. Ted Bundy fooled police, manipulated the system, and not once, but twice he broke free. It was June 1977. Inside a courthouse in Aspen, Colorado, Bundy wasn't just a defendant. He was acting as his own attorney. That gave him freedom, movement, opportunity. While alone in a law library, he made his move. He ran to the window and jumped 2 stories down into the outside world. Just like that, he was gone. For 6 days, Bundy hid in the mountains, cold, injured, hunted. And you know what? I hope he felt like that. But not gone forever. Police eventually found him and brought him back into custody. Most prisoners would give up after one failed escape. Not Bundy. No, not Bundy. This time he planned everything. Inside a jail in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, he began starving himself. Day by day, losing weight, getting smaller. All for one reason. There was a tiny hole in the ceiling of his cell, too small for most people, but not him. Not for him, of course. One night in December 1977, Bundy climbed it. Bundy climbed up, squeezed through the opening, and disappeared into the darkness above. He crawled through the ceiling, dropped down into the jailer's apartment, and walked out. No alarms, no struggle, no one noticed. This time, he didn't get caught right away. He fled across the country, eventually ending up in Florida. And what happened next would become some of the most horrifying crimes in American history, including attacks near Florida State University. 2 escapes. The first, a warning. The second, a nightmare. Like, really? How does that even happen? Wow. And by the time it was over, the world finally saw Ted Bundy for what he truly was. January 15th, 1978, Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. Bundy entered the house late at night while residents were asleep. Margaret Bowman, 21-year-old student, she was attacked in her bed and tragically died from her injuries. What followed, shortly after attacking Margaret Bowman, Bundy attacked Lisa Levy, who was also unalived, essayed 2 other women in the house who survived, thankfully, but I can only imagine how tragic everything felt and how traumatized they were. And this was only the beginning of his final chapter. He was still on the run. When Ted Bundy arrived in Pensacola, Florida, he was on the run after the Florida State University attacks. And this is where his final crimes and capture happened. The attack in Pensacola was February 9th, 1978. Kimberly Litch, a 12-year-old girl, I'm sorry if I said her name wrong. Seriously, like, this monster has no limits. 12 years old. Ugh. So, Kimberly was at her middle school in Lake City, Florida, near Pensacola. Bundy abducted her from school grounds. She was later unalived. This was one of his most disturbing crimes and marked the final known victim. After the abduction, Bundy traveled around the Florida Panhandle, used stolen vehicles, stayed under the radar while police were actively searching for him. He was essentially trying to avoid capture while continuing the move. And let me tell you about Florida. Pensacola, I lived there for a couple years. There are so many homeless that live around Pensacola that I could see how Ted Bundy could get away with this. And being in 1970s, oh yeah, it's going to be way different then. And I'm sure there's going to be homeless then as well. But there's so many homeless there. And I can only imagine, thinking about it now, how many of those homeless people are serial killers? Now, I know some of them just really need help. Yes, I agree. But think about that. What if one or a dozen are serial killers and we just don't know it? That's a scary thought right there. So Bundy traveled around the Florida Panhandle, of course. He used the stolen vehicles. He stayed under the radar. He was essentially trying to avoid the capture. The final arrest was in Pensacola. Thank goodness for that. February 15th, 1978, a police officer noticed a suspicious stolen car. When the officer tried to arrest him, Bundy fought violently, attempted to escape again. I'm glad there wasn't a third time. But this time, he failed. This arrest in Pensacola ended his time on the run for good. He had escaped before twice. He had fooled police, manipulated the system, and taken lives without mercy. But this time, there would be no escape. January 24th, 1989, Florida State Prison. He sat in the electric chair. His life of deception, manipulation, and unaliving came to an end. For the victims who had no voice, justice had finally arrived. 2 escapes, countless victims, a life defined by terror. Ted Bundy's story ended in that chair. but the shadow of his crimes still haunt us. Before his execution in 1989, Bundy confessed to dozens of murders. He admitted to killing Laura, but confessions from a serial killer aren't enough to close a case. Police needed physical evidence. And in 1974, the technology simply didn't exist. So Laura's case stayed open, like many victims, for 5 decades. In 2026, cold case investigators from the Utah County Sheriff's Office revisited the evidence. Using modern forensic DNA testing that didn't exist in the 70s or 80s, they extracted a male DNA profile from preserved evidence. They ran it through the FBI database, and it came back a match: Ted Bundy. After 50 years, detectives finally had what they also suspected: definite proof. I wonder if they are working on any more cases. For Laura's family, this wasn't about Bundy. It was about finally having the truth in writing. Her case is no longer unsolved. Her killer is no longer suspected. It is now official. Ted Bundy unalived as many as 30 or more suspected young women who, like so many, had dreams, routines, and the quiet rhythms of everyday life. They were a friend, a family member, and someone who simply wanted to live a life like anyone else, laughing with loved ones, going about their days, and making memories. They were a normal girl with hopes and connections that mattered deeply to those around them, whose life was tragically cut short far too soon because of this monster. Ted Bundy confessed to 30 murders, and investigators believe that the real number is much higher. And even today, decades after his execution, his crimes are still being uncovered. Cases are still being closed, and families are still getting answers. Some mysteries just take time to find its truth. And for these victims, we have one that is actually closed, thankfully, for this family. If you guys are still here and you liked what you watched, please subscribe, please like, please comment what you think. Thanks for being here. Be careful out there, and don't talk to strangers.